Everyone, we're going to start up. The regular meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority is now in session at 9 o'clock on May 11th. Mr. Tejas, any public comment?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Then we'll go to item number 3, adoption of minutes for the CRRMA board meeting of April 13th, 2016. Mr. Tejas.
Thank you. Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. So on this item, there are a couple of revisions that I'm asking to be incorporated into hopefully the motion to approve. And the first one is under item number 3A, transportation from Texas Department of Transportation should be capitalized. The second one would be under item number 8. There's an extra S in the word items, if you could, and we'll delete that S. And then the third item is under number 14, where we would add director and the words director to in between executive and execute. So it would actually read executive director to execute. So those three minor corrections, I'd ask that they be rolled into the motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Any opposed? We'll go on to item number 4, presentation and update on the El Paso streetcar project.
Today, so you all may recall each quarter we do performance updates for Cesar Chavez, Bike Share, and some other programs. The following months, we intend to do quarterly updates on the streetcar project and also the 2013 Comprehensive Mobility Plan. So for the streetcar project today, we have with us Gil Gardner, who's the project manager from the Atkins team, who manages the streetcar project for us. So I'm going to ask him to walk us through the latest updates.
Good morning. As Raymond said, I'm Gil Gardner. I'm glad to be here again for a second time, or actually this is a third time now. This is our second presentation. We've gone quite a ways on this, so bear with me while I remember how to do this. Okay. Anyway, we got a fairly short agenda. I just want to go over it to give you a summary of the progress, what we're doing in construction. We've also included some PCC information for the vehicles. I know you're interested in that, and their development plans and, of course, construction or community involvement. The progress summary contract sum was $61,476,000. We've completed to date of almost $10 million, almost $10,600,000. We're about 17% complete so far to date. The work breakdown, as you can see on the slide, for the civil track work, the wastewater replacement, the potable water replacement, and then the CBD4 work that's down in the Father Rom area. On the construction update, we've completed our demolition and grading on the maintenance facility. If you recall, the first time we were here back in February, we gave you a picture of the grading and site work that we were doing there. We finally got all that completed. We're now building, and as you can see on the thing, we're starting our foundation work. I was out there yesterday, and they're pouring a lot of concrete. Soon we'll be out of the ground, and we'll actually see the building start to rise. It is on schedule, and hope to be completed in about a year. This is the important thing that's coming up, and that's the delivery of the rail. The rail came in from Austria. The first of the 3 shipments is in El Paso down at the contractor's site. We had another shipment that's just coming in this week, and we expect the rest of it to be in by the end of June. The first placement of the track will be on Oregon near UTEP. The reason we're doing the Oregon UTEP area at this point is to get out of the way of some programs that the university has, and we want to get all that work done so it doesn't interfere with it. We started putting the foundations in April, so if you've been driving up, you've been seeing a truck, with the auger drilling the holes for the foundations and seeing the baskets. There's, I believe, 440 or over 400 foundations that are being drilling. We've completed about 20% of it. The work continuing on Oregon right now. The conduits for the traction power substation are being done along First Avenue to Campbell Street and that along Glory Road, and we're started on the slabs and stuff for the traction power substations. That's started, so we've started the electrical work. The wastewater and sanitary sewer work is about 45% complete. We started that work at the end of February. We're still doing work on Oregon. The contractor hopes to be completed by the end of June, so when we start the civil work. The water line work is about 60% complete. It continues in spots all over the area. Just to give you a piece of information, we're actually underrunning the water line a little bit, so that's a pleasant piece of information. The Father Arm in Kansas, this is a CBD4 work. It's about 18% complete. They're starting the storm drain replacement. They're actually started in March. They're working on it. We had to do a little bit of redesign to make it work appropriately, but they've got all that done, so they're going to finish that up. Once they start that, they'll immediately start the civil work in the Father Rom area and try to get all that cleaned up, and because of the patience of the people down there, it's just been fantastic. But they hope to get it cleaned up and get out. That's going to be one of their key elements that they're working on. For the vehicle remanufacturing that we're looking, the contract was executed in October. If you recall, we paid about a little over $6 million, $6.5 million for the reconstruction of the 6 vehicles and then the system support, the training and spare parts. Did had one amendment. The amendment was for $77,000. Addressed some numerous items, including the windows, a change in the windows and the paint. There are 6 of them. The car bodies are in excellent condition, and they're on time. And hope to be on, have them in the first one in by, when is it, Chuck?
December 17th.
Yeah, December 2017. It's well underway. It's on schedule. The vehicles are stripped to the bare metal. They're ready. They're blasting them. In the latter part of this week, they'll have a face-to-face design review meeting so they can look and see what's going on, any additional work that needs to be done. And as Chuck says, the delivery of the vehicles for testing is scheduled for between December 2017 and July 2018. There's a sample of one of the vehicles. That's what they look like in the manufacturing. We'll be putting in wheelchair lifts to meet the ADA requirements, the HVAC for the air conditioning, new propulsion, new brake system, and new pantographs. As part of the work that the DSDC designer is doing, AECOM is doing, is we've got several plans that have to be presented. They're working on those. They delivered the second draft of all of the plans so far. The last one, startup and testing, will be later this month. And then there was an FDA update to the rail transit rules in March of 2016. So we've incorporated all of those updates into it. So the plans will be updated to meet the federal requirements. And the community involvement, if you recall, Barracuda has been handling our community involvement. They've been very, very active on it, doing an excellent job. With some of the recent presentations that we've done were the El Paso Chamber and the Institute of Real Estate Management, Representative Acosta's community meeting, and we've actually had a couple of community meetings, several neighborhood association meetings, and then the Kern Place Association, which are very active, very interested in the project. We also had our second open house at Sacred Heart Church down in the Father Rom area. While it wasn't attended quite as well as the previous one we had at the library, It was attended, and we were very pleased that people asked some penetrating questions, and we were able to answer them there. We issue the e-newsletters, and we provide the regular updates to Facebook and Instagram, and it's been very, very successful in keeping the people informed. We have a weekly stakeholders meeting. In fact, Marina would be doing this today, except she's at the weekly stakeholders meeting. And I told her that was probably a little more important than coming down here and doing that, because she spends that time to work closely with them, especially on the traffic control. So she tries to work with them closely and work with the contractor to make certain that the stakeholders are all involved in the traffic control and know what's going on. We also do monthly special events coordination meetings with the city and all private events within the area here, so we can coordinate our work with the special events that come on, and we have a minimal impact on the special events. And we have our bilingual door-to-door notifications, and the project hotline has been pretty busy. We've gotten a few calls on it. We've been able to answer the questions that they had. On the construction management end, just to give you an idea, we've received a total of 135 submittals from the contractor, of which we've closed out 127. We're still processing about 8. So we're staying on track, keeping them processed, not holding the contractor up. We've received about 145 requests for information, of which there are only about 13 that are still open, and there's only 1 that is open for any period of time. The rest of them we managed to do. On the pay estimates, we've received 5 for the contractor, 4 have been paid, 1's in progress for the infrastructure. On the vehicles, we've received 4 invoices, which have been paid. We haven't received the 5th one yet. Anyway, any questions that you might have?
Any questions for Mr. Gardner?
I don't understand requests for information. What are those?
That's where a contractor, there's maybe a question of confusion, or the site is a little different than the plan. So the contractor's asking a question. That's what he's doing. And what we've discovered years ago is that we formalize those, and that's what we call a request for information.
Okay.
That way it just doesn't get lost.
Any other questions? Well, we certainly like to hear it on time and on budget.
Yeah, so
And
far
it
it's
looks
on
like
time and on budget.
It looks great. Thank you. And I
All right.
commend you all on your community outreach, because I think that's made a great difference in helping people understand the timeline. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll go on to item number 5, presentation and update on the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan, and discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the executive director to advertise construction on the following 2013 CMP projects. Mr. Taz.
So for this item, as I mentioned, this is another quarterly update for you all. This one dealing specifically with the Comprehensive Mobility Plan, the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan. For this item, we'll have David Head, also from the Atkins General Engineering Consultant Team, provide an update to you all. At the back end, then, there will be some requested board actions that David will kick it back to me, and we'll go through those as well. So with that, I'll ask Mr. Head to present.
Hi, good morning. David Head with the GEC, and I'll be presenting the County Comprehensive Mobility Plan. So we're going to go through that. With that, the agenda will be that we'll look back at the map. You've seen it many times, but kind of refresh your memory. We'll talk about the project listing, go through that. And then the project updates, we broke them into design, construction, and funded by the CRRMA, and then I'll hand it back over to Raymond for requested board actions. So you've seen this map many times. There's approximately 16 projects, and they're scattered throughout El Paso County, as you can see. We'll be talking about a majority of those, and this is the list that we will be talking about. And I think you've seen this list before, but we'll go down them a little bit. East Lake 1 is from I-10 to Darrington, then you've got East Lake 2 as a continuation of that. There's the Rojas project, Vista del Sol, and then the newest one we have is the Darrington Road project from East Lake to Pelicano. The projects under construction or almost in construction are the Old Waco tanks, which is from I-10 to North Loop, and then you've got the Mission Ridge project in the El Camino National Historic Trail. And then there are projects that are going to be funded by the RMA, the Greg Edgemere project and the Aguilera International Highway, which is over in Tornillo. Excuse me. So the projects in design, the East Lake Phase 1, if you remember, this one is a four-lane divided roadway right now. We're going to widen it to 6 lanes, and it's from I-10 to Darrington. The PS&E, the plans and the estimate is approximately at 98% complete, and the construction proposed estimate is, or probable cost is $26 million at this time. The anticipated letting is in early 2017, and it's waiting on some VRF2 funding source. So the East Lake Phase 2 project is a continuation of East Lake Phase 1, and it starts at Darrington and moves down to Horizon Boulevard. It's also going to be a 6-lane divided roadway, basically in the town of Horizon. The PS&E is approximately at 98% complete. Also, the probable cost for construction is at $20.5 million, and we anticipate, subject to your approval, letting this project in July. The Rojas Drive project is another project in design right now. It's the widened Rojas to a 6-lane divided from 4 lanes. It's over there behind the TxDOT offices. It's basically from the El Paso city limits to East Lake Boulevard, which plugs into the East Lake 1 project. PS&E is at 98% complete, and the construction probable cost is at $4.8 million, and we're wanting to let that one also in July, subject to your approval. The next project in design is the Vista del Sol project. It's currently a 2-lane roadway, and we want to divide that to a 4-lane roadway from 375 Joe Battle to Charrington Drive. The PS&E is at 90% complete. The construction estimate, probable cost is $4.6 million. We're wanting to put this one in the August letting. We think we can do that, and the El Paso Water Utility is wanting to get into this contract also with sanitary sewer and water line also. So that one, we're thinking they will get into that subject to your approval also, and all the agreements that have to go with it. This is the newest project, Darrington Road. It is to widen to a 4-lane divided road from East Lake to Pelicano. The PS&E has just started on it. The probable cost of construction is going to be $5 million, and we're thinking that one will be ready to go to construction in the winter of 2017. So let's move to the projects under construction or nearing or very close to being constructed. Old Waco Tanks Road is the first one. If you remember, it was designed by TxDOT. The plans have been complete. They're at 100%. It's the 4-lane divided road just down from East Lake on the other side of I-10, from I-10 to North Loop. So it's a continuation kind of along that corridor there. But this is the city of Socorro is developing this, or they're kind of the sponsors of it. The probable cost of construction is $10.4 million. And the letting is going to, we want to put it in the August letting. Subject to your approval, the city of Socorro is acquiring the right-of-way, and I think right now they are starting with their utility relocations, staking and that sort of thing to get the utilities out of the way, which is part of their effort on the project. There are some pending agreements that need to be done before we can move to construction, but you can see the list of them there. So Mission Ridge Boulevard, if you remember, we let this project back in the fall, and it's from Pelicano to 1 mile south. CMD Endeavors is the contractor, and to date we've spent $1.4 million on it through March. They're pretty much on time. You can see the time versus complete statement there. They've completed the 24-inch water line through the project, but the water line continues on past the roadway portion. The pond is nearly complete. You can see a picture of it there. And they're working on storm sewer, curb and gutter, and some of the fence that goes, the rock wall fence that goes with it. We've processed 3 change orders for a total of $46,000. If you'll remember from last month, you approved those, and the completion is in the winter 2017, so they're pretty much still on track. The National Historic Trail Project, this one is historic signage, basically all the way through the county. It's from San Elizario to Anthony, Texas. The PS&E is at 100% complete, and the probable cost of construction is $270,000. But we're working with the El Paso County and TxDOT on inclusion of some additional signage that was requested to make the route a little bit clearer in some people's estimation, and so we're waiting on that to be approved, and the letting will be scheduled as soon as we get that coordination done. We're hoping to put it in either July or the August letting, whichever one it comes to. So now we go to the projects that are funded by the RMA. The first one is the Gregg Edgemere Extension Project. This is the continuation of Edgemere over to Gregg Road. It's on a new facility. It'd be 4 lanes divided with bike lanes. The RMA is to fund the project via a payment to the county for $2.5 million, and there'll be an interlocal agreement that goes to Commissioners Court next week to put all that in place, and then also that is somewhat they're letting. It's a county developer participation agreement with the county, and so that would kick off that project to move forward into construction. The Aguilera International Highway is over in Tornillo. This one was let by TxDOT, and it's managed by TxDOT. It's from basically Texas 20 down to I-10, or up to I-10. Dan Williams Company is the contractor. It's a $15.5 million contract. As you can see, they're a little bit ahead of schedule, and $4.9 million has been paid out to date. You can see a picture of one of the large structures going across the railroad there, and the possible completion they're estimating in the spring of 2017. So I think they're ahead of schedule, so it may come out a little bit sooner than that. Then I believe I'll turn it over to Raymond for requested board actions, if there's pending any questions.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
On the 5th slide on East Lake Phase 1, anticipated letting early 2017, VRF2 funding source. Can you explain, or waiting for VRF2 funding source?
I can do that. As you'll recall, some time ago, back in 2013, I believe it was, the County of El Paso authorized the Regional Mobility Authority to go out with a vehicle registration fee bond issuance, and that was really early in the development of the Comprehensive Mobility Plan, where there was a funding approach that included transportation reinvestment zones from the county, Socorro, and Horizon, and then we were going to use those revenues to actually go out and get state infrastructure bank loans, and there were some other funding sources. Well, after the Attorney General's opinion determined that county transportation reinvestment zones were, it was a constitutionality question, then the county went back and reformulated how they were going to pay for the Comprehensive Mobility Plan. And instead of using the TRZ SIB loan approach, they decided to go directly to the State Infrastructure Bank for loans based on their general fund, and then the secondary supporting funding source, I should say the second and third would be Transportation Reinvestment Zone, would be the vehicle registration fee bonds that we issued for $72 million, and then a second bond issuance that would be coming later. So that second bond issuance is what we're referring to here. So at this point, the county is looking at authorizing the Regional Mobility Authority to go out with a second bond issuance. Now, it'd be much smaller than the 72, and I think they're working out exactly how much they need for the remaining projects. So that'll be coming to you in the coming months.
Thank you, Mr. Tejas. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Head? Thank you. Raymond?
Can I ask you to take it to the last slide, and I'll walk the board through the requested board actions. Thank you. So the requested board actions for today then, as noted specifically in item 5A, B, C, and D, is a request for authorization to issue construction advertisements for the following projects: East Lake Project Phase 1, East Lake Project Phase 2, Old Waco Tanks Project, and Vista del Sol. What we're really talking about here is, as Mr. Head mentioned throughout the update, most of the projects that were in design are actually nearing or are complete. So at this point, we're now ready to move into the construction phase. So one of the first steps we obviously have to do is get authorization from this board to actually advertise the construction using the design documents that were completed under that first phase. So that's what you see before you today, which is 4 separate resolutions, which can be taken as a single motion, but 4 separate resolutions authorizing the advertising for the construction of those particular projects. So that's for today. And future actions then, and really kind of in very general terms, the way that these programs will progress is that the construction will be advertised, then we'll receive bids. We will bring those bids back to the Regional Mobility Authority for hopefully approval, but prior to that, there would be interlocal amendments, or I should say amendments to the interlocal agreements between the Regional Mobility Authority and the county, granting access to the construction funds through the vehicle registration fees. And then the very next item would be awards for those construction projects as they've come in. So that's procedurally what you'll see. But in very general terms, the future actions then would be amendments to the county interlocals to access construction funds, and then agreements with the construction contractors. And then, of course, as I mentioned, as Mr. Wardy asked, there will likely be agreements with the county to authorize the RMA to go out and issue a second vehicle registration fee bond issuance. So, subject to your questions, I would ask for approval of items 5A, B, C, and D, which are the resolutions authorizing authorizing the ability to advertise for construction on those 4 particular projects.
Any other questions or comments, discussion? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Been a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 5's been approved. On to item number 6. Discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute a local project advance funding agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation for the federal funding necessary for the Old Waco Tanks project. Mr. Tez.
Yes, ma'am. So this project has actually been before the board before, but I figured we should bring it back because when it came, it was probably 1.5 to 2 years ago, and there have been some changes since then. By way of background, this project is also, and in fact it was discussed by Mr. Head, it's part of the 2013 County Comprehensive Mobility Plan. And this one is a little bit unique in that for this one, the City of Socorro remains involved. They're responsible for acquiring right-of-way and handling utility relocations. TxDOT is providing federal funds for this one. And then there are also vehicle registration fee funds that are being provided by the county through the RMA. So it's a very unique structure for this particular project. But what you see before you today then is the advanced funding agreement, and that's the type of agreement that is always required whenever TxDOT provides federal funding to a local agency. What you have actually is an advanced funding agreement, a master agreement, that really generates the various terms and conditions between TxDOT and the RMA for all future local project advance funding agreements. So we have the master agreement in place. It's been in place for a couple of years. What you see under item 6 then is the local project advance funding agreement for this particular project, and identifies the project budget, identifies all the specific details of this particular project. So for this one, again, as I mentioned, I had received authority from the Regional Mobility Authority Board probably 2 years ago, so I wanted to bring it back because there have been some changes. But you have as backup the current draft. And I'd mention also that this is a draft, unfortunately, because TxDOT continues to work on the template. These advanced funding agreements are templates that are used throughout the state that are developed by their Office of Contract Services. And as I understand it, they are updating certain provisions required by the federal government. As their federal funds, they flow down, and all the provisions that come from the feds to TxDOT then flow through this advanced funding agreement to us. So I understand that they're tweaking some of the federal provisions in this, but in very general terms, this is the agreement. Now, of course, if there are any major substantive changes to this template, then I would bring it back and ask for additional authority. But subject to your questions, that's what I have for you on this one. I would recommend approval.
Any questions or discussion for Mr. Chase? Mr. Chase on item number 6? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. There's been a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 6 is approved. Item number 7, discussion and action on a board resolution to authorize the executive director to execute a local project advance funding agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation for the expansion of the El Paso Bike Share Program. Mr. Taz.
Yes, ma'am. So this is a continuation of the discussion that we began last month. The difference with this agreement is that, as you recall, with last month you gave approval to sign the agreement to accept local contributions from UTEP and also from the City of El Paso. In between that meeting of April 13th and today, this item went before the Metropolitan Planning Organization and was approved at that point for the award of federal funds. So as I mentioned before, all federal transportation funds flow through TxDOT to the local governmental body through an advanced funding agreement. So that's why you see another advanced funding agreement here between the Regional Mobility Authority and TxDOT. So because the MPO has approved it, now TxDOT is authorized to execute a local project advanced funding agreement. So that's what you see before you here. So this is the last of the 3 funding agreements between the RMA and the funding entities. So, and again, this is a draft. As I mentioned, they are, as I understand it, Office of Contract Services is tweaking the federal provisions. So,
Again, any major changes you'll bring back to the,
Absolutely.
to the board for approval. Any questions or discussion?
How much money have they freed up for this?
So for this one on the federal component, it's, you can see it on the last page. The total project is $584,000. 284 of that, 284,000 will come from the federal side. The remaining 300,000 comes from the City of El Paso and UTEP, and they are each providing $150,000.
Oh, I didn't see the last page. I apologize for that. Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank
Any
you.
other questions, discussion? Entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So item number 7 has been approved. Going on to item number 8, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution, thank you, of the following items as they relate to the Metropia Synergy Solutions Project. A, local project advance funding agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation. B, interlocal agreement for project contributions with the City of El Paso. And C, project agreement with Metropia, Inc. Mr. Taz.
So this one has been before the board as well, but it's been quite some time, and we've had quite a number of membership changes. Sorry, I had the mic muted. This one has been before the RMA board before, but we've had quite a number of member changes since then, so I thought it might be prudent to have Metropia present on what it is that this program is. And then from there, I can talk a little bit about what the items are in terms of items 8A, B, and C, and how the structure will work. So I'll ask IT to come out and help. We've got a flash drive that we'd like to present something from. While we're getting arranged, we have with us today Mary Beth Stevens, who's here on behalf of the Metropia group, and they're the folks that are looking to provide this service to us.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, my name is Mary Beth Stevens, and I'm a local advisor for Metropia. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I know that some of you have gotten quite familiar with Metropia, but a few of you may be less familiar with it, so we wanted to give a short presentation today and just give you an overview before Raymond proceeds with discussing the agreements. So Metropia is what we call a mobility ecosystem, and the goal of Metropia is to reduce congestion to create more livable cities. It's a community-based application, and it does this by working to try to change behavior. And so it's a solution to congestion in addition to or complementary to building more infrastructure. And so what we have learned is that small incremental changes in driver behavior, in particular driver behavior, can have dramatic effects on reducing congestion and making our cities better places to live. So the way Metropia is different, you of course are familiar with other navigation apps like Waze or Google Maps, but Metropia is different in that it's a community-based solution. We're in individual cities and communities, so here we're working with the MPO's service territory, if you will. We've also launched in New York. We're in the testing phase there. We're in Austin and in Tucson, and probably going to be launching in maybe up to 10 more cities in the next year. And what happens when Metropia comes into a city is that they work with the local transportation agencies, any and all. They work with drivers, they work with businesses, and most importantly, overall, they work with the community. And it's a long-term approach, and I'll explain a little bit how all of that works together. So how does it work? Metropia uses the next generation of technology. It's real-time technology and it's predictive technology. And so it can predict traffic patterns and behaviors. And they work with the Transportation Systems Management and what's that O? That O is operations for El Paso. Some of these are transportation terms of art. And they apply active demand management for better mobility. So Metropia serves really as a bridge to users, which are the drivers, and again, tries to change their behavior. It also works with the transportation agencies. It shares data with them. So our technology captures a tremendous amount of data. So they share that with TxDOT so that they can improve their systems and help for their better service and managing their system. And then they also, Metropia will share its data with others. Like, for instance, we'll partner hopefully with Sun Metro and others. And so we can do things that it's not just about gathering data and talking about cars, but it's looking at the entire transportation system. So ultimately we'll be able to share data, for instance, with Sun Metro so they can help their users. I'll give some examples about this in a minute. We want to also increase alternative transportation modes. So the first goal is to change behaviors in terms of people's individual driving habits, but then we want to next step change that into using other alternative forms of transportation. So, and then how do we do this? So we use gamification and incentives. And so again, this goes back method of approaching this transportation concept, if you will. So the Metropia app, how do I get it? Oh, it is up there. Okay, sorry. So the Metropia app, how many, are you familiar with the Metropia app? Have any of you used it? Okay. So for those of you who aren't, it's really about planning. And that's how it really distinguishes itself from other navigation apps. So it's about planning. So even if you're taking the same route every day to work or places that you go typically in your day, the idea is that in the morning or before you're leaving, as early as you can, you put in your routes and the times you need to go there. And if you can see up there, it's a little bit hard to read, but if you haven't downloaded the app, I hope that you will do it and you'll get a better sense of this. You put in there, it gives you options of when you need to arrive to a particular destination. And underneath the time that you need to arrive, it also has points associated with that. So let's say on a given morning, like I needed to be here at, we'll say 9 o'clock. So I'm having my coffee in the morning, I get up and I put in, I need to be downtown at 9 o'clock at City Hall. It'll say, well, if you leave at 8:30, it'll take you 15 minutes to get there. If you leave at 8:40, it might take you, based on the traffic patterns, 25 minutes and you're going to be late. But gosh, if you left at 8, it'd only take you 12 minutes, you have time for a cup of coffee. So it gives you some choices in there. And it has points associated for what the system would consider better choices that ultimately alleviate some of the congestion on the roads. Those points can then be, they aggregate, and you can use those points for, right now locally, you earn them, you can get Starbucks gift card, you can get an Amazon gift card, but the goal ultimately is to be working with local partners and merchants. Any in Austin, they've got, yoga studios, they've got coffee shops, they've got Taco Deli, they've got all sorts of things. We try to find, but again, be as local as we can. And again, it's all about changing behavior and creating this ecosystem. So some of the other things, but as you can kind of get a sense from there, it is also a navigation app. So if you don't know where you're going, it does the exact same service, if you will, as a Google Maps or a Waze, but it has better predictive behavior. And another thing I'll mention a little bit more, we've got people locally. We're going to have 2 engineers locally. We're hiring a community manager, myself. So as we all know, traffic in El Paso is changing on not just a daily basis, but every few hours. And so that's a very different component. We've got people here to know exactly what's going on, are plugged in. They get the emails from TxDOT and the city and everybody else, and are also driving around so we know what's going on. But what we do, like what I talk about, is when you're earning the points, you have to incentivize this behavior change. And so they do that through these points. You can see, sorry, I keep changing my screen, but not this one. It's what we call gamification features. And so here, there's a guy in Austin that loves Metropia so much, he actually created or wrote a song for it, so you can actually use your points, download his song. We hope to have some other things like that, get some local artists to do things like that. You can see there's threads, clothing. You can also, regardless of how you want to redeem your points, Metropia keeps track of all the points earned. It tracks based on how much time you save being in your car, how much CO2 you saved, tracks that, shows you personally how you do that. And Metropia plants trees. They work with the Forest Association to plant trees. So like we like to say, we're not only reducing CO2 in the atmosphere, we're actually trying to scrub a little bit of out by planting those trees. And what I kind of briefly alluded to before is the multimodal features. It encourages carpooling. I'll get to that a little bit more because it does it in a very robust way. It will encourage use of transit, van pools, bike sharing, all of that. And it will give people information so that they can explore these other options. And I don't know if you heard the term, it's sort of that last mile. So sometimes you use an alternative form of transportation, but it only gets you so far. So now our city is doing so much with the bike share, more walking paths, things like that. It will actually direct you to how to get to that last mile and help you. So like say if you carpool with somebody but you get dropped off at one location, it'll help you downtown or wherever you are to get to those other folks, other places. The driving up occupancy, the duo feature, it's our carpooling feature, and we're pretty proud of it. It's, again, it doesn't get all the cars off the road, but it gets a few cars off the road, and so basically you do this by incentivizing as well. You get extra points, and they try to make it more fun. So if I'm in the car and I've got my Metropia app on, and my passenger gets in the car too, and theirs is on, little bobbleheads will come up with their picture so we know you're driving together. The driver gets, I think it's double points. The passenger also gets points, and they do it through a little game, a spinning wheel on your phone, and that, so it's, you know, you don't know how many points you're going to get, but it's just trying to make it more fun and engaging for users. And so really Metropia, you can see on this slide, it's an interface. It interfaces with the Transportation System Management and Operations of TxDOT and others, and users. And again, we have that local network to keep that as up to date and real time as possible. And so like I said, we're hiring 2 engineers to be here. Locally, we're hiring a community manager that will work with anyone and everyone as we start to promote this. I'll give you the timeline in just a little bit, but ultimately we'll be working with, so it's not just about working with TxDOT and the MPO and the RMA and Sun Metro. We're also going to be working with employers, and we've been doing that in other communities. So we'll be going and meeting with them and really trying to work with them to encourage them to have flex schedules, alternative schedules for their employees where it's feasible. A lot of people, of course, on the west side are like, please do that for especially the larger businesses out there. If you can get just a few hundred users off the road at those peak hours, it makes a tremendous impact. And I encourage you, if you have more interest in this, on the metropia.com website, there's a video that Dr. Yicheng Chu, who's the founder of Metropia, he was a professor at UTEP and civil engineer professor, and now he's at University of Arizona, but he's done a video that shows with, what do you call that, the funnels, putting grains through a funnel, and it's just a very simple explanation of how taking just a little bit of that congestion off can make your traffic flow, which makes your city flow, which makes your economy flow, et cetera. So it's pretty exciting. So hopefully you all have heard we're in our, what we call the pioneer stage. Our first stage of this was the alpha stage, of course, testing, and that was a very sort of private testing stage. Only Metropia contractors and other folks were using the app because you have to perfect it. Again, in a city like El Paso with so much construction, if this had been a year and a half ago, it would have been so much faster. But you have to have people out on the roads driving, providing feedback. So now on February 25th, we launched the Pioneer program, and our goal was to get 500 users to be the pioneers, to provide feedback, use the app. You know, by any means, it was not perfect, and so we didn't do. It wasn't a huge public launch, but we absolutely have exceeded our goals there, and it's been great. And the more users, naturally, with the system, it just increases the reliability. So it's been a huge success, and there's a lot of thanks to go out to the folks that have adopted it. And so as you can see, from just in February, 648 people registered their accounts. They drove 68.5 thousand miles, average of 9.49 miles per trip. It's pretty obvious people going either from the east side to the west side, downtown, back. And then how many trips, et cetera, and the reservations. So, and those numbers just keep growing every day. And every day, the more people are using it, the more accurate the system gets. And you can see by this slide, 0 is 0 errors, And so you want to be hovering as close to that line as possible. You'll never have 0 errors, but you can see that we've leveled off. I'll give an example. I live where I used to take racetrack every day to get on Paisano, and I think probably most people know that's closed now. And I kept getting directed there 2 or 3 times, and I put in my feedback saying, if you send anyone here again, they will never use this app again. They fix it right away. They take care of what we can. Any kind of feedback. So if you're using it, it's very, very much appreciated. So, what's next? Just like I said, we're in the process of hiring a local community manager. They'll be working with merchants, getting those local merchants on board. If you have any ideas of people that you'd like to be able to redeem gift cards, things like that for us to work with, please let us know. Working with employers. We've been already working with the city, which you're going to hear about in just a few minutes. This app is going to be very, very useful in terms of predicting bridge wait times. I'll let Raymond talk about that a little bit, but we're very, very excited about that. We're working on a partnership with UTEP to be able to help them with their parking lots so that you'll be able to, when you're driving to a big event or game there, you'll be able to know which lot's full. So do you want to come in on Mesa? Do you want to come in on I-10? We'll be able to do that, maybe even helping them with their bus routes from their parking lots for students. The possibilities are really unlimited. It's just a matter of time and resources moving things along, but it's all very, very excited. We'll be having a public launch in September. We'll probably be ready for that a little bit sooner, but it doesn't make sense to do a big launch late July or August just because of people traveling out of town. So September, when schools are back in and UTEP's getting started, we'll do a big public launch, and hopefully you guys will be a part of that. And really, other than that, it's just a thank you to certainly Raymond. He and his team very, well, you don't have much of a team, do you? He and all of his colleagues have been very, very helpful. Folks at the city, from Bridges to Lauren Baldwin and Nicole Farini in the sustainability office have been very, very helpful. City Council has been very helping us, encourage us. So just lots of folks have been great. So I'm going to not make it any longer than that because my technological savviness of this doesn't get that deep anyway. But if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions, comments?
I am curious on how the bridge wait time project is going to work, because I know that we've had conflicting data from numerous sources on that. So I'm real curious how the implementation of that will work.
Do you want me to, or do you want to?
Sure, I'll take over from here.
Great.
So let me, if I can build up to that. So I want to give a little bit of background in terms of the project itself and how it came to be, and that's how the bridge component got rolled in. So if you'll bear with me for a moment. And this is really for the benefit of some of our newer members and also the benefit of the public. So the Metropia project came to the MPO, I want to say probably 2 years ago, if not a little bit longer. The MPO actually approved the project at that time for federal funds. And then it got held up with some federal regulations and federal reviews and that sort of thing. Once it got through those hurdles, then the fiscal year in which the federal funds had been approved had lapsed. So they had to go through the process again with the MPO. So this has been kind of out there for quite some time. A lot of folks have been really interested in it, including TxDOT, and very anxious to get this up and running. So when it went through the process the second time, there was a lot of anxious entities saying, okay, well, let's get this running. How can we move this quickly? So what happened at that point is that TxDOT actually agreed to fund some of the preliminary work and some of the data uploads and some of the early activities like the Pioneer program that Ms. Stevens mentioned and that sort of thing. So TxDOT has actually been funding some of the work early to get the thing up and running with the intention to avoid a situation where finally we get all the contracts in place and get everything done, and then on that day one, Metropia finally begins the data uploads, and it's going to take this whole long period. So it was really in an effort to expedite the implementation of the project. So that was really exciting. And in that interim, though, Metropia was making presentations to the street department, to mass transit, to the bridge division, to any and everybody who was interested. UTEP, you heard, is also interested. And at that time, I should mention also, very early on, when the MPO approved the program, they asked the RMA to implement the project. So that's how the RMA is involved. We're really the implementing agency because as you know, the MPO is a planning organization. They're not an implementer. So when they approved it, they asked the RMA to step in and actually implement. So anyhow, so along that process, as we were working out the final details for this final program, TxDOT started to do the early preliminary work. Then the City of El Paso, through their bridge division, said, how could we use this technology for developing accurate wait times, because that's been an issue for them for many, many years. And Metropia developed an approach, and they worked with the City of El Paso to really figure out what would make the most sense. And really what it amounts to is the Metropia system will be monitoring the entire region, and then we'll input all of that data, so your app will actually be telling Metropia how long you're sitting on the bridge, so that we'll be measuring actual wait times and implementing that into the system. So you'll be able to track wait times from any point that you'd like. So the bridge division obviously is very interested in that. So to that point, you see under item 8B, the City of El Paso, through their bridge division, is actually providing, I can tell you right now, providing a little over $400,000 for Metropia to develop the infrastructure necessary to actually include the bridge wait times into this program, which was not originally anticipated. So the original program was just for the MPO's jurisdiction or limits, which stops obviously at the international boundary. This additional $400,000 gives Metropia the resources necessary to actually capture those bridge wait times. So again, you're seeing cooperation across agencies here. Under item 4A, you'll see the local project advance funding agreement, as we discussed. Anytime you're using federal funds, it goes through TxDOT and to the local agency through an advance funding agreement. So that's what you see under item 8A. Item 8B then is the project contributions from the City of El Paso's bridge division for the bridge wait time component. And then the final agreement then is the project agreement itself with Metropia. So in very general terms then, TxDOT is providing federal funds to the RMA, the city is providing local funds to the RMA, and then the RMA has an agreement with Metropia to actually implement the entire scope. So that's how this will work.
One more question. So when will the bridge project be implemented? Is there an estimation?
That I don't have. Do you know that, Mary? Other than to say that all of the activities that Metropia will be doing will be concurrent. So it'll be happening at the same time, but I couldn't tell you when the bridge component will actually launch.
If I gave you an estimate, it'd be very, very fuzzy, but as soon as this agreement's approved, we'll be able to start putting the technology in place there. And then I will get back to you with a better answer to that question, but what I would estimate is late fall, because we have to really, for the bridge, we have to get the public launch and have more users. You don't need tens of thousands of users by any means to have it accurate, but we will want more users, and we'll also be working with organizations in Juarez to find out who are the, where we can capture the most commuters. We'll be working with some of the maquilas as well, so it'll be both commercial and private transport. So
it'll work in Juarez too, then? Is that the...
Just over, like on the bridges,
By the
that's
bridges.
where we'll install the technology in order to be capture all of that. So, but we'll do things like we'll reach out to the UTEP students, the international students that are coming over, and as many folks as that we can get the sort of the critical mass of people coming over.
I'd mentioned too a really good point that I think Ms. Stevens was touching on was the idea that once this agreement is actually executed, one of the very first tasks is for all of the parties to sit down, that's including TxDOT, the city, the RMA, and obviously Metropia, to scope out that first phase and identify exactly what the city wants in terms of their bridge component and that sort of thing. So a lot of this will come once we have that first initial kind of scoping meeting.
And you'll see some very interesting things that will come from it. The data that they can capture will be all on a dashboard for them, and our bridges department will be able to see, or the city's bridges department will be able to see where people are coming from to get to each bridge, They'll be on both sides of the border. They'll be able to also, if people are using it and planning ahead, they'll be able to direct them to other bridges if the times are shorter, which is, of course, the ultimate goal.
So is that data going to be made public? Or is that
Yes,
something
ma'am.
that
So
it
all
will-
of the
all
area
it?
agencies will have access to the data, provided that they sign a license agreement with Metropia. So that's whether they're contributing or not. The MPO has access to it. And that's what's really, I think, one of the really interesting components about this is that anybody in the area has access to the data.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
Thank you.
One question. During or following an earlier presentation, I put the app on my Android phone, and I found that it was indeed the perfect storm in draining power from my battery, so I removed the app. I've been led to believe that you all have fixed that problem, but I noticed there are 2 app refinements based on user comments in the budget here. And my question is, have you fixed that? And do you intend to monitor that to make certain that it does not recur? Because that would be a very negative thing for a lot of users.
Absolutely, and that you brought that up. We actually were talking on this. We have a call every Monday morning for about 2 hours and to go over certain issues, and that was a key issue. And so they believe they have corrected that, but they've asked all of us to put it on and track and take screenshots of our battery level and do it. So, I mean, it's a very dynamic system being evolved right now, but yes, that is very much on their mind and literally talking about it just on Wednesday.
Well, should I put it back on or just wait for a while?
No, you should put it back on, and if you have any problems, you should send feedback and let me know too.
Okay.
No, but the feedback is just the most crucial thing. It's the only way the system improves itself. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
I've got a little
Mr.
question,
Fernandez?
and believe me, it is little, but Metropia Mobility and Synergy Project, are you part of a organization, a corporation, or
No.
privately held, or?
It's Yicheng Chu is the founder. It's privately held, and it's there's about 30 employees, not all full time. They're all over the globe, really. The headquarters are in Tucson, and we have about probably 10 engineers working there. And then we've got people in New York, people in Austin, people in China, people in Taiwan, but it's privately held. So, and the goal. This might sound self-serving, but it's not, because I really wouldn't work with them when I met them and learned more about them. Their intentions are very, very good. They really want to make cities better, more livable, and better places to operate and do business. And they're passionate about reducing congestion and figuring out alternative ways. And so that's what's kind of interesting and great about working with them, is that as the app and the other technology evolves, they're just constantly looking for better solutions to it. It's not just, there's clearly a financial component, but it's not just that. And so hopefully, probably in the fall, when we're actually launching, YC, we call him, you'd enjoy meeting him, and we'd be absolutely happy to come back and let you know how the whole process has evolved. And he comes in at least once a month now. He loves coming to El Paso. Again, he was a professor at UTEP, and as we have more staff here too. Some of you had met previously a woman, Xenia Hernandez, and she has just moved to Italy. She's having a baby and she's moving to Italy, but she was working with Metropia before. So if you had met her and wondering what happened or where she's going, it's because she's going to be moving her with the military over to Italy for a little while. So, but we're happy to come back anytime you have any questions. And please don't ever hesitate to give me a call if you have any questions or concerns. All right?
Thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions or discussion? Les is putting his app on right now, right? Is that right?
Say again.
You're downloading the app right now?
It's already downloaded. And it's not draining my battery yet.
Okay, all right.
Good news. Okay.
Thank you all
very
for the
much, Ms.
opportunity to
Stevens.
be here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So if there are any further questions or discussions on item number 8, we can take them all together.
Yes, ma'am.
A motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Been a motion to approve and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item 8 has been approved. Item 9, discussion and action on a request for CRRMA membership on the board and/or committees of the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization. This item was put on place by Ms. Tiner, and in light of the fact that she's not here today, I think we'd like to wait until she's in attendance. We could
So
We could table
perhaps a
it.
motion to postpone to the next
Postpone.
board meeting?
Move to postpone.
Second.
Been motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Is there any other business in front of the RMA? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The meeting of the RMA is now adjourned at, I have a clock in front of me, at 10:12.